Men in Black It was a spectacular film. Those dark glasses, the impeccable suits, those silver briefcases, and those serious expressions of agents who burst in homes with memory-erasing devices. Seriously, this sci-fi comedy wasn't just a commercial success, it was a cultural phenomenon. Every element of this production was fascinating and memorable. But beyond those iconic glasses, the strangely designed alien creatures, and those scenes that are etched in our memories, there's an arsenal of secrets that even Agent K would take to his grave. From casting choices no one saw coming to crazy situations during filming, prepare for a memory wipe as we explore 20 unusual facts you didn't know about this movie. Number 20. The Elvis Presley joke was an early clue. Remember when Agent K said Elvis isn't dead? That he just came home? That line got laughs. But some fans think it wasn't just a joke. They think it was a clue. A huge, glowing alien clue. An Easter egg hidden in plain sight. Here's the weird part. In the sequels, the idea of celebrities being aliens becomes canon. A whole list of famous people is revealed as undercover space visitors. Maybe Agent K wasn't kidding. Perhaps Elvis really did return to his home planet on a beam of light, which would explain the white suit and those hip movements. No human could move like that. Director Barry Sonnenfeld admitted the line was meant to be funny, yet mysterious. He loved the idea of blending real-life myths with science fiction. And what better myth than Elvis still alive, living on a beach somewhere, or maybe rocking out on a peanut butter moon? It makes you wonder which other stars are aliens in disguise. Is that why Beyoncé never sweats? Or why Keanu Reeves still looks the same after 30 years? Number 19. Aliens were designed to look strangely familiar. Have you ever seen an alien in Men in Black and thought, wait, I've seen that guy at the DMV? That wasn't an accident. The design team wanted the creatures to feel familiar, yet unsettling. They blended very human traits with exaggerated features. One alien was inspired by that typical grumpy uncle at family gatherings, and another ended up looking like a melted librarian. It was like crossing concept art with an awkward family reunion. The makeup department worked with photographs of celebrities, politicians, and even teachers to create aliens that felt like they could exist in real life. One particularly odd alien, the one who sorts the mail, was modeled after an actual employee in the studio's mailroom, an anecdote some of the creators have shared in interviews. One designer even said they were looking for a recognizable weirdness. Beings as strange as they were plausible. People you wouldn't be surprised to see ahead of you in the supermarket checkout line buying cat food and cough syrup. That visual choice added a subtle message to the film. Perhaps aliens aren't all lost in outer space. Maybe some are. Already here, camouflaged, working, and paying rent like everyone else. So the next time you see someone with unusually long fingers and suspiciously long sunglasses, don't panic. Just smile politely and, if you can, take a quick look to see if they're wearing a tail. You might be standing next to someone who's already failed the space driving test more than once. Number 18. The scene with the bug was real. Well, not the giant cockroach. That was definitely fake, unless someone hadn't cleaned their garage in 20 years. But the scene where the bug explodes at the end, some of that gross stuff was completely real. The sticky goo covering Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones was a glorious mixture of oatmeal, slime, syrup, and who knows what else. It looked like an alien had thrown up a pancake breakfast. The special effects team gave it their all. They built a massive animatronic insect over 3 meters tall, with moving legs, a twitching head, and eyes that blinked as if it were fed up with Earth. When they blew it to bits, the resulting mess wasn't computer-generated imagery, but liters and liters of filth sprayed at the actors with pressure cannons. Tommy Lee Jones was so hit by that alien slime that he almost left the set early. Will Smith, true to form, just laughed and said it smelled like rotten salad. That disgusting ending had the audience both applauding and squirming in their seats. It was slimy, disastrous, and impossible to forget. And the cleanup? Let's just say it took longer than filming the entire creature sequence. Alien guts aren't exactly easy to scrub. Number 17. Steven Spielberg was very involved. When Steven Spielberg gets involved in a project, you know things are going to get serious, or seriously weird. He didn't just lend his name to Men in Black. He was executive producer, story consultant, official alien animator, and probably even the guy who brought snacks to the set. His touch was everywhere in the film, except on the aliens themselves, because they were sticky enough already. He was the one who convinced the studio to cast Will Smith. Initially, the studio wanted a white actor. Spielberg said, "No, bring me the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air." And that's how science fiction history was made. He also pushed for more humor and less darkness. The original comic book was a much darker and more sinister story. Spielberg wanted something lighter, something kids could watch without ending up crying in their popcorn. Thanks to that, the tone that ended up on screen was defined. A buddy comedy with space cockroaches and exploding heads. It's even said that he suggested changes to the aliens' design, asking that they be weird but endearing, very much in the Spielberg style. He's like the friendly uncle of science fiction. He always makes sure the explosions are fun and the monsters have personality. So, if you laughed watching Men in Black, you probably owe Spielberg more than a few laughs. Number 16. The Aliens. Language was real. Well, sort of. The aliens in Men in Black weren't just making random noises. Some of those strange sounds were based on real languages and speech patterns. The sound team got creative. They mixed snippets of Eastern European dialects, animal calls, and even sped up German to construct a galactic language that sounded like it had its own grammar. One of the sounds came from a turkey gobbling in reverse. Another was created by combining the sound of a blender with someone sneezing into a harmonica. And if that doesn't sound weird enough, there's an alien in the background who, if you listen to it in slow motion, says something like, "I like pudding." Turns out, they're also fans of the dessert. The cast had to rehearse scenes talking to these intergalactic chatterboxes without laughing so that everything would look authentic, which was much harder than it sounds. Imagine trying to keep your composure while a slug-faced creature babbles like a blender choked on marbles. The best part is that they hired linguists to check that the alien babble didn't inadvertently insult any real culture, because the last thing you want is to offend someone with an invented language. So yes, those aliens were talking. All that was missing was a translator, skilled in blender slang and window bug spatial. Number 15. The neutralizer was inspired by a camera flash. It might surprise you to learn that the iconic memory erasing device, with its bright red light, wasn't born as a futuristic invention in a laboratory, but rather took its inspiration from a simple flashbulb. Those old camera flashes that made everyone blink as if they were staring directly at the sun. Director Barry Sonnenfeld thought, what if that same blinding flash could erase your entire afternoon? The design of the eraser was simple, sleek, and completely fake. But the idea worked so well that anyone would want one. Imagine using it on your boss after a bad meeting, or on yourself after binge-watching an embarrassing reality show. The sound system gave it that satisfying buzz that made it sound authentic. Ladies and gentlemen, look here, please. Add a light-up tip, a dramatic flick of the wrist, and voila, instant erasure. The actors even had to practice holding it so it would look great on screen. Will Smith mastered the swivel with style, and Tommy Lee Jones aimed and pressed the button like he was resetting a toaster. The neutralizer became one of the most recognizable props in science fiction film history. It's part gadget, part weapon, and part dream tool for anyone who's ever said something awkward at a party. Too bad it doesn't exist. Or maybe it does. Wait, what were we talking about? Number 14. Will Smith kept forgetting his line, and it was all Tommy's fault. Will Smith may be the king of charisma, but even the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air was left speechless more than once. The reason? Tommy Lee Jones. Tommy was so intense and serious on set that Will would lose his lines mid-scene. Imagine trying to crack a joke while a stone-faced cowboy stares at you like you've insulted his horse. It couldn't have been easy, even for Big Willie. Will himself recounted in interviews how Tommy's dry, expressionless way of speaking completely threw him off. It was like acting in front of a brick wall that would occasionally growl. One second you were supposed to be witty and relaxed, and the next, you were stuttering like you'd run into your math teacher in the middle of nowhere. At one point, they had to do retakes because Will would either laugh or go completely blank. Tommy would just sigh, cross his arms, and wait, which probably made it even worse. Who wants to forget their lines in front of a grumpy Oscar winner with a mouth blocker in his pocket? In the end, Will adapted. He learned to interpret Tommy's icy stare as a challenge. And to be honest, that awkwardness actually made the movie better. The dynamic between them felt authentic. They were like a pair of cops forced to share a car across the galaxy, with zero patience and plenty of hilarious clashes. Number 13. Tommy Lee Jones rewrote his dialogue. Tommy Lee Jones isn't just that guy with the permanent scowl and a penchant for blowing aliens up. He's also a man of strong opinions. And on the set of Men in Black, those opinions came with a pen. Tommy tweaked several of his lines, not because they were bad, but because he wanted them to sound more like something Agent K would actually say. Now imagine the screenwriter trying to argue with him. That's Tommy Lee Jones. He has the voice of a disillusioned school principal and the look of someone who knows where the secrets are buried. All you can do is nod, hand over the script, and walk away feeling utterly humiliated. Some of the film's best dry moments came directly from Tommy's tweaks. He knew exactly how cutting and understated Agent K's humor needed to be. He also eliminated anything that sounded too dramatic or too embellished. If it wasn't sharp, brief, and laced with irony, it was gone. The result was a performance so dry it could make a desert jealous. He turned bad temper into a superpower and sarcasm into a form of justice. So, the next time you laugh at one of K's pithy one-liners, remember to give credit to the man who crafted them. Number 12. The Pug was a diva. Of course, you remember Frank the dog's adorable face, his grumpy attitude, and his enormous ego. That dog wasn't just a supporting character, he was a full-time furry diva. Played by a real pug named Mushu, Frank became so popular that he became the furry face of the franchise. But behind the scenes, Mushu demanded more takes than Will Smith and had more handlers than Tommy Lee Jones. The cast and crew quickly learned that working with Mushu meant adapting to Mushu. He only obeyed orders when he felt like it. He might bark out of nowhere, yawn, or fall asleep mid-scene, and he had to be bribed with treats as if he were a minor. Movie star with his own dressing room, which, in fact, he did have. Mushu was trained to move his mouth to the rhythm of the dialogue using peanut butter and tons of patience. Each scene he appeared in took 3 times as long to film, but nobody complained because somehow he always delivered pure gold on screen. His chemistry with the cast was so good that anyone would think he had an agent. He returned for the sequel with an even bigger role and, by all accounts, even more attitude. Mushu wasn't just a dog, he was a scene-stealing machine wrapped in a fur coat. Number 11. The worms arrived late. Remember those lanky, caffeine-addicted guys who looked like worms with legs? They almost didn't make the cut. They were going to be left out, like that friend who shows up after dessert and still asks for a helping. Director Barry Sonnenfeld hadn't planned on including them at first, but then the test screenings came around and the audience demanded more laughs, more mayhem, and, of course, more cigarette-smoking worms. They were added during reshoots. Someone had to build worm puppets against the clock and give them dialogue as if they were auditioning for a space version of Friends. And their voices? They weren't provided by famous actors, but by members of the sound crew themselves, guys who probably thought they were just going to be handling the audio and ended up becoming alien legends. The worms became an unexpected sensation. They were so popular that they appeared in all the Men in Black sequels and even had their own merchandise. Try explaining to your grandmother that your favorite character is a 4-armed worm with tight pants who drinks espresso and chain smokes. Moral of the story: never underestimate the power of a coffee-fueled space worm to steal the scene. They arrived late, but they carved their way into film history. Number 10. The Bugs Walk was inspired by a little girl. You might think that the terrifying alien cockroach inhabiting Edgar's skin walked like a drunken crab thanks to some science fiction genius. But no, that hunched, clumsy gait was born thanks to a little girl. Yes, a tiny, wobbly creature, probably covered in juice. Vincent D'Onofrio, the actor who played the insect inside the human body, had the brilliant idea of studying how his niece moved around the house. She walked as if her joints were made of cooked spaghetti, and that became the model for Edgar the Bug's movement. He added a few groans, back creaks, and an excess of knee clicks, and voila, alien movement achieved. D'Onofrio even wrapped his knees in elastic bandages to limit their movement and mimic those strange joint displacements. Imagine doing that in the middle of summer, carrying over 20 pounds of prosthetics while yelling for sugar water. That man earned himself a cockroach-shaped trophy. That little girl's contribution is perhaps one of the most unfair cases of uncredited movement consulting in film history. She wasn't on screen, but her clumsy walk lives on forever in a villain who looks like a second-hand mannequin come to life. So, the next time you see a kid wobbly and bump into a wall, Remember that that energy once saved a movie from having aliens with a boring walk. Number 9. The original ending was discarded. Believe it or not, the ending of Men in Black was originally going to be very different. Instead of an explosive fight against a giant insect and a monumental memory wipe, the planned finale featured a huge, philosophical alien with enormous lips delivering a very serious speech. Basically, instead of action, we were going to get an existential monologue from a floating head that looked like a cosmic version of Mr. Potato Head. Director Barry Sonnenfeld himself admitted that this climax didn't work. In it, a species called the Arquillians spouted so much wisdom about saving galaxies that it almost put Agent J to sleep. Test screenings made it clear that the space therapy concept wasn't resonating with audiences, so they scrapped that idea. And then came the cockroach. Not just any old bathroom intruder, but a skyscraper-sized creature using Edgar as a skin suit. The final showdown transformed into a battle of physical humor, exploding entrails, acrobatic dodging, and a massive final blast. Suddenly, people in the theater were applauding instead of checking the time. The change literally saved the film. Nobody wanted to hear a motivational cosmic speech. What audiences wanted was slime, energy beams, and a hero firing a trumpet-sized weapon at a giant insect's rear end. Sometimes, saving the galaxy isn't about grand speeches, but about blasting a space cockroach to bits. Number 8. Danny DeVito was considered for Agent J. It sounds incredibly strange, right? But it's true. Danny DeVito, the same guy who once jumped off a couch naked in a TV series, was considered to play J. Imagine the scene. An agent barely over 4 feet tall, wearing sunglasses bigger than his head, chasing aliens while spouting insults with a New Jersey accent. The idea was real and circulated in the early casting discussions. It wasn't some internet hoax. According to director Barry Sonnenfeld, the studio threw his name around like confetti at a UFO parade. They wanted a very weird buddy comedy dynamic, and nothing screams odd couple like DeVito trying to pilot a spaceship while sitting on cushions to reach the pedals. Now, imagine Will Smith's lines coming out as Danny. You know what the difference is between you and me? I make this suit look like a disaster. Or DeVito trying to flirt with the alien forensic scientist. That scene probably would have ended with an angry tentacle shoving him into a locker. In the end, DeVito didn't get the part. Maybe the alien weapons were too tall. Perhaps the studio figured even interstellar criminals would stop and laugh. Instead, they chose Will Smith, who brought charisma, confidence, and legs long enough to escape a spaceship. No offense, Danny, but this story needed fewer penguins and more princes. Number 7. David Schwimmer was first on the list to be Agent J. Yes, I'm talking about Ross from Friends. Instead of chasing snacks and obsessing over dinosaurs, he could have been running after space cockroaches with a futuristic weapon in hand. The actor who brought to life the paleontologist with the most disastrous love life on television received an official offer to play Jay. But he decided to turn it down. At the time, he was directing an independent film, and apparently he thought that hunting aliens might ruin his auteur cinema aura. Besides, wearing sunglasses at night and erasing memories was perhaps too much of a change for someone who had spent a decade living in the same building as Joey and company. Just for fun, imagine what that version would have been like. An Agent J who, instead of interrogating space worms, asked them if they were on a break. Who yelled, "My sandwich," every time an alien stole his lunch from the agency refrigerator. The movie probably would have had more meltdowns and fewer explosions. Luckily, Will Smith came along, strutted through the audition like he was on a hip-hop stage, and landed the role. He gave the character swagger, charisma, and a level of style that a Schwimmer-led version of Jay would have barely achieved without tripping over his own shoelaces. Number 6. Clint Eastwood was considered for Agent K before Tommy Lee Jones became the grumpy alien-hunting cowboy of the century. The studio had another squinty-eyed gunslinger in mind, Clint Eastwood. Yes, Dirty Harry almost traded his .44 Magnum for a stun gun. Director Barry Sonnenfeld even recounted that the producers thought Clint would bring a very get-off-my-planet vibe. Just imagine that voice muttering, "Go ahead, make my galaxy your day," while disintegrating a space worm. The problem was that Clint read the script and passed on it. Maybe it was the talking pug, perhaps the exploding bug guts, or maybe he just thought retirement sounded better than fighting a tuxedo-clad space squid. By then, he was well into his 60s and more interested in directing than chasing aliens through sewer tunnels. Still, it's amusing to imagine him frowning in the final scene as he tells his partner to keep the change. In the end, Tommy Lee Jones took over with that unflappable expression that screamed, "I'm gonna punch a cockroach." He nailed the dry retorts, balanced Will Smith's energy like a perpetually annoying stepfather, and turned Agent K into a legendary character. Clint Eastwood was perhaps too tough to bathe in insect juice, but thankfully he said no. The film needed more sarcasm and fewer squints. Number 5. Tommy Lee Jones hated cockroaches. Tommy Lee Jones is generally known for playing grumpy guys and for that stony face that almost never shows emotion. But if you remember how he treated the aliens in Men in Black, especially Edgar the Bug, there was something very real there. That cockroach villain from outer space was as detestable to him as a slow internet connection. Edgar, played by Vincent D'Onofrio, was half animatronic, half makeup, and 100% nightmare material. In his final form, the Bug was a gigantic, slimy puppet with legs and unsettling eyes. Every time he appeared on set, Tommy would flinch a little and even told the crew, "I act with humans, not giant insects." And he meant it. In the final showdown, when Agent K is swallowed by the monster, Tommy reportedly needed a moment to take a deep breath and mentally question why he'd ever taken the job. The slime was sticky, the creature's movements were disgusting, and the smell was, to say the least, questionable. He persevered like a pro, but with each take, he looked like a man reconsidering his entire career. When filming wrapped, someone joked that he should take the puppet home. He replied that he'd set it on fire if it came within a meter of his car. Tommy Lee Jones may be unstoppable on screen, but put a cockroach the size of a sofa in front of him, and he's one shout away from early retirement. Number 4. Men in Black was based on an obscure comic book. Long before Will Smith donned his Ray-Ban sunglasses and turned the story into a comedy, Men in Black was a decidedly unfunny comic. The original series appeared in the early 1990s, published by a small press called Aircel Comics, which was later acquired by Malibu Comics and then by Marvel. In those pages, the agents didn't just hunt aliens, they also pursued demons, vampires, time travelers, and anything else capable of giving you insomnia. They were less of a comedic duo and more of cold-blooded enforcers with highly questionable morals. They didn't just erase memories. In some cases, they erased entire people without a trace. When Barry Sonnenfeld and Steven Spielberg saw that material, they took the core idea but decided not to traumatize the entire audience. They simplified the concept, removed much of the darkness, kept only the extraterrestrial element, added humor, threw Frank the dog into the mix, and thus a family blockbuster was born. Even so, if you look closely, you can see that more sinister origin beneath the surface. Agent K retains that silent, empty air about him. The creature remains genuinely terrifying, and if the comic book version had made it to the screen intact, the age rating would have been considerably more restrictive. Number 2. Will Smith almost said no. Surprising, isn't it? Before becoming Agent J, Will Smith almost turned down a global phenomenon. Let's travel back to the mid-90s. Will had just triumphed with Independence Day and wasn't keen on doing another Alien movie. His logic: too much space, not enough variety. When Barry Sonnenfeld offered him the role, Will responded with a hesitant, maybe. He was ready to decline until his wife, Jada Pinkett Smith, did what some partners do best: tell you you're crazy. She read the script and basically told him he'd better wear that black suit before someone else did. Even then, Will was still undecided. Then Steven Spielberg entered the picture, and he had to convince him in person. His way of sweetening the offer was, essentially, to remind him who Steven Spielberg was. That was enough. Suddenly, Will was totally in. Years later, he would admit that if Spielberg hadn't insisted, he probably would have passed up the most elegant role of his career: smashing aliens. In an alternate universe, another actor would have worn those glasses and cracked jokes to a talking dog. With names like Danny DeVito on dream lists, all that's left is to be thankful that Jada and fate intervened in time. Men in Black without Will Smith as Agent J would have been a very different film. Number 1. Government agents reel they visited the set. Men in Black was filmed in 1996 and released in 1997, directed by Barry Sonnenfeld, who probably didn't sign on thinking his sci-fi comedy came with a bonus dose of paranoia. The movie was all about aliens, memory wipes, and talking dogs, until things got really weird. Imagine real government agents showing up on set for a surprise visit. It wasn't acting or just another scene. Instead of asking for food, drinks, autographs, or a photo with the stars, these guys were just walking around with a we-know-it-all attitude and then disappear like your memories after a numbing agent. Some crew members said they never saw any credentials. One swore he locked eyes with one of them and immediately forgot what year it was. Another said his sandwich tasted like surveillance after they walked past him. No one could explain why they were there or what they were looking for. Spielberg didn't call them. Tommy Lee Jones didn't recognize them. Will Smith joked that if they were talent scouts, they needed acting lessons. Even the pug growled. The visit was so mysterious that the cast started saying maybe they were there to make sure the movie didn't reveal too much truth. If they were trying to be discreet, they failed worse than Edgar trying to wear human skin. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like, share it, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any more hidden movie stories. Tell us in the comments what other movie you'd like us to dissect, revealing its best-kept secrets.